Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Unmute Your Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host from Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm so excited to have Raven with me. She is from Georgia, and I'm excited to get to know her, learn a little bit more about her story, and for her to inspire you all. Raven, thank you so much for agreeing to be on my platform today. It is a true honor. If you could just let us get to know you a little bit by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you, Jessica, for the opportunity to be a part of your platform. So yes, I am Raven M. Harris, and I am a dream activator. And I like to say that I help young professionals, millennials, and new and emerging leaders attach a reality to their dreams.
I love that. And that's a big title. So can you just like a dream activator? So can you go in a little bit more into detail about exactly what that is and what do you do?
Yes. So I like to call myself a trusted advisor, right? I help new and emerging leaders, young professionals that have always had a dream. They're high achievers, they're leaders, they're high performers, but they get stuck. They get stuck in oftentimes the what. What is the dream? Clarity on what the dream is, and the how do I execute on it? And I don't want people's dreams just to be in their heads or in their imaginations. And the backstory of really how I arrived here is that I've always had massive dreams, but life happened, right? Life happened, and there were times where I had naysayers. There were times where I felt that, oh, your dream is too big. It's impossible. It's too hard. And of course, you hear that negative chatter around you in the background, really, poisoning your thoughts, your ideas, and your dreams. And I suppressed my dreams for over 2 decades. And my corporate background is in healthcare administration. And this time last year, I was in the C-suite of a hospital. And being in these environments and seeing so much fear, chaos, the reminder of how uncertain life is, and seeing so much death, quite frankly, really made me start to think about my own life, the impact that I was supposed to have, the influence that I know that I'm supposed to have. But I felt unfulfilled. And I don't want to discredit the work that I was blessed to be able to do. I was blessed to be a blessing in the healthcare environment because that's meaningful work. It's meaningful work. It's life-changing work, life-saving work. And the fact that I was just a small part of giving life, restoring life in patients' lives, as well as really speaking life into my peers, my team members, I feel fortunate for that. But there was something inside of me that continued to feel empty. There was something inside of me that said, but there's more. And when it came to, okay, well, Raven, what do you do? Do you stay on the same path and, quote unquote, climb the career or corporate ladder? Or do you do something different, something that is like that burning dream that you have inside of you? And dreams don't go away. There's a reason why that thing you like, oh, it's in the back of my head. It keeps coming up. Keeps coming up because it's like, hey, you're going to do it now? What about now? What are you waiting on? And you'll see other people around you living their dreams. I think that's one of the reasons you'll hear the term escapism. People watch TV. Watch a ton of TV because we're watching somebody else build their dreams. People get infatuated with celebrities. Oh, look at this person. Look at their success because they're living their dream. And it's almost like, oh, wow. Oh, I wish I could. Oh, how great it must be. And it's not to say that your accomplishment of your dream is going to be that you're a celebrity. No, not that at all. I'm saying there's a reason why we look up to certain people, because they're walking in their purpose. They're doing their thing. They're living their life. They've taken on the YOLO. You only live once. And it's super important to me. I feel called to do that, to help other people get out of that unstuck feeling, get out of that, oh, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. No, you can. And maybe it's not celebrity level, because that may not be your calling. But when you walk and you do the thing that you were born to do, that you were designed to do, that only you can do the way you do it, there's a different level of excitement, joy, even peace that you have. And that is what I help people do.
That is amazing. And you brought up a couple of really good points. One of them being, you talked about how it was such like an honor to do, what you were doing, working in the medical field, especially in the time in which you were doing it, right? Because who would have even predicted that the whole pandemic and everything would have happened? And so I think that's such a good point, because you can be doing something that is amazing and life-saving and blessing a ton of people. But like you said, still have that feeling of like, I'm called to do more. And I think there's something beautiful about having that hunger of like, yeah, I'm doing something great, but like there's still something greater inside of me. And I love that you said there's something very attractive about people who are walking in their purpose and in their calling, and not even attractive in like a romance sense, but like we're like, it's like a magnet. Like we cling to people who are walking in their calling and walking in their purpose. And so as you started doing that, when you realized, hey, I love what I'm doing, but there's this hunger for more, what were some of the steps that you took to kind of start, inching more towards that purpose that you felt like you had?
Oh, that's a great question. The first thing that I had to do is give myself permission to recognize that, to realize that. And one of the things that really stands out to me is that oftentimes when you are great or excellent at something and it's a gift, you discredit it because you do it so easily. You don't even think anything about it. You're like, oh yeah, you just do, boom, 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 boom. Well, there's someone that feels like a mountaintop for them. That's complicated for them. That's confusing for them. And what I found to be one of my gifts is to really affirm, encourage, and empower people. And one of the vehicles of doing that was through my voice. One of the major leadership skills in terms of inspiration, inspiring people to act and act towards a common goal. I didn't even think anything of it. People were like, well, why, I'm always curious. Why do you have such high employee engagement? Why does your team love you? And honestly, I was like, I'm not sure. I just say that's just who I am. That's how I connect with people. But when I really got to the foundation of that, it's because I am always looking to elevate, encourage, and empower people. And I think people feel that. As you mentioned, like that attraction to people, there's something special when you feel like, you know what, I have an affinity to this person. I have an affinity to their message and how they carry themselves. And it was something that I overlooked because that was just, I thought it was just who I am. So I think it's super important first to even give yourself permission to say, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this. Actually, I'm great at this. And recognizing it first, and then also to celebrating yourself. I didn't celebrate that gift because it was something that I thought, well, I just do that. So that was really the first step, is to recognize it, celebrate it, and give myself permission to say, hey, this is something you are excellent at. And it's not boastful. It's just, this is just fact. It's not boastful. And it's something that I needed to encourage myself on. And I think another thing is oftentimes people who are high performers, high achievers, and leaders, we don't take enough time to really celebrate our own wins and celebrate our successes. We're always uplifting others, that sometimes, you know what, the uplifter needs to be uplifted. The uplifter needs to get some recharge as well.
Yeah, and that was actually my next line of questioning, because I know sometimes when you're the one who is pouring into other people, when you're the one who is building other people, sometimes you can neglect yourself in that process. So what is it that you do to kind of make sure you stay full so that you have enough to continue to pour into other people? Because helping people build their dreams is not, it's like it's taking something from you, right? So even though it's your purpose, you know, you're having to pour into them and say, and sometimes see in other people what they're not seeing in themselves yet. And so how do you stay full so that you can effectively do that?
For me, quiet time is super important. And I am an introvert. So as an introvert, I refuel with alone time. It's time for me to reflect. It's time for me to recharge. It's time for me to reset. I journal as well. So in order to get all of those million of ideas that are swarming through my brain out, I always say it's better, or my dad it's like it's better out than in. So I make sure that I, put it all on paper as a way to get those thoughts out of my mind and try to organize them and see them and write them. And I also too, I go for walks. Just walking in nature is relaxing and peaceful. And it's a time for me to recharge, and I pray. That's another key core number one thing for me to really recenter and rebalance and reset myself. And I like that you mentioned pouring into other people. There is an energy exchange, and it really can be exhausting. And I think it's super important for anyone listening to make sure that they take time for self. We hear the common phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. So I definitely try to make sure that I refuel my cup so I can help others replenish their cup and pour from a full cup.
Definitely. And I think that, self-care has kind of become like a trendy word, but it's so important because we can just be running on E. And then I also love that you talked about celebrating yourselves. I think sometimes we can be our own harshest critic. And, we're running around giving everybody else praise, and we don't take the time to say, hey, like, I'm actually doing something. And like you said, realizing that it's okay to admit that you're good at something. I know a lot of people that I know, they're like, oh, this is just natural, or, oh, it's no big deal. But everybody cannot do you like you can do you. And so I think, being able to see what makes you different is really going to allow people to excel in what they're called to do. And so I wanted to ask you, like, in your personal life, even maybe when you were younger, were there people who poured into you? Were there people who saw things in you, or was this kind of more self-taught or self-built?
My parents have been amazing. I feel that I'm very fortunate to have two people that support me no matter what. I always say they have to, because they don't have any other person to give their energy to. I'm an only child. And I think that was a blessing for me. Even though when I was younger, I was like, I always want a sibling, because they grew up, my mother is one of 7. So she grew up in a larger family. And I remember when I was younger, she said, I just wanted to make sure I could give you my full undivided attention. So I'm super grateful for them, for encouraging me, as well as being that place of refuge and seeing things in me that I don't know that I saw in myself. Really, my mother is the person that spearheaded me into speaking. And what I found that I loved about speaking was theater. I love theater, the arts, dramas, entertainment per se. And she really kind of put that seed in me and watered that seed from a young age.
I love that. And it is so important to have people, everyone, because, everyone doesn't have maybe a parent or somebody who does support them like that. So I think that is so beautiful to have. And it's truly a blessing as well. And so when you're helping people build or figure out their dream or that kind of thing, what are some of the steps that you take with them to kind of help get them on the right direction? If you're just now tuning in to this episode of Unmute Your Mic, I'm currently talking to Raven. She is from Georgia, and we are having an amazing conversation about finding your dream, identifying your dream, and just living out your God-given purpose. Continue to listen and be inspired.
The very first one is clarity, right? What is the dream? And what's your why? You'll hear Simon Sinek says start with the why. I think having a why and being very clear on what that why is really keeps you focused, keeps you resilient when things go awry, right? When things don't go as planned, when you hit a roadblock, when you hit an obstacle, because you will. We all do, right? We all have to have moments where, okay, I call it the reset, right? Pausing to speed up, slowing down to be able to speed up. So the very first component of the program that I walk people through is dreaming. And what is that dream and why do you have that dream? And it goes back to that permission to dream again. Because someone asked me the other day, well, how do you help people find their dream? I said, I don't really have to help people find their dream. The dream is already there. Now, whether or not you suppressed it, whether or not you put it to the back of your mind, whether or not you told yourself or someone else told you it was impossible, so you gave up on it, I truly believe we all already have the dreams. However, what stops people is this seems impossible, or this is so massive. Or I know for me, it was one of those, like, if I told anybody some of the dreams and visions I have, they think I was out to lunch, like I have lost it. And it's important too. One of the things that I think is super important is being in a space or with a mentor or a trusted advisor that is a safe space to share that dream. Because you do have to, anyone that is familiar with Joseph in the Bible, you have to protect your dream, because people will rain on your dream. People will make you feel like, really? You want to do that? Why? Don't you know there is a 1 in a million, all those type of things, give you the statistics of why it won't work or how challenging it will be. And I think if you allow that poison into your thoughts, into your energy, your environment, it can really get you off track. So I think it's super important to dream again, but know who to share the dream with and how to really approach and navigate the dream. And that's what I work with people on, making sure that they know that I'm a trusted advisor, because the dream wasn't given. When someone has a dream, the dream was given to them. So who is anybody else to be like, well, did you know how hard that is? Let me give you some statistics. I don't need the statistics. I don't need the naysayers. I don't need the negative chatter. It's my dream. And I believe that our dreams are already given to you. So where there's vision, there will also be provision. The end.
Listen, that's a whole sermon just right there, because it is so important who we share our dreams with. Sometimes I know for me, sometimes God will tell me something and it'll excite me and I'll be ready to just like yell it from the mountaintops, like, oh, God showed me this and I want to do this, this, and this. And then you encounter people, like you said, who are like, well, why do you think that would happen? Why would you get that? Why would you be the one who there's millions of people who would love to do that. And if you're not strong and if you can't stand on what you know is yours, then people can come and kind of like rock the boat and make you say, well, why would I be If only 1 out of every 10 million people can do this, why am I that one? And so, for you, um, being able to like pull that, not like you said, the dream is already there. So being able to facilitate people in pulling that out, I think that's such a blessing and a gift to have, because everybody can't do that. And like you said, you have to be trusted. People have to look at you and be like, hey, this person actually has a heart to care and help me do this. And so so is it like a program that you put people through? Do you do like consultations? How does that work?
I have a program that I take clients through, where we go through some dreaming, some deciding, some developing, and really being clear on what that dream is, creating that dream statement, or you'll often hear that vision statement. And I want to go back to what you're saying, standing firm on what that is. One key component is that vision statement, or I call it the dream statement, and anchoring in that. Anchoring so hard in that it's one of those, I shall not be moved. That is like core, because as we're going through that process of attaching a reality to the dream, as I mentioned earlier, you will experience some roadblocks, some obstacles, some doubt. And anchoring so hard into that vision that no matter what, that's one of the things that I share with people. No matter what, we shall overcome this, right? So that's the process. And then, of course, creating a strategic plan and executing on that. And that's the core to the program. And one of the things I remind people too, it is a journey. It is a journey. It's not an overnight. And as my grandma said, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Everyone would be walking perfectly in their God-given design and purpose if it were easy. So it's definitely not easy, but there are steps to achieving what you know that you are designed here to do and that you were placed here to do. And I think I like to also to anchor in to Marie Forleo. At least she has a book, but I know I've heard her say it as a quote: everything is figure outable. Or they say nothing is new under the sun. So someone has been there, done that before, and we utilize those resources, no matter how big your dream is, how massive it is, to figure, okay, well, who has exposure or experience in this particular field that I don't have? Just offline a few minutes ago, Jessica was giving me also, the gems on a program that I had no idea about. I was like, see, look, she's already unlocking the door for me and telling me about something I didn't even know existed. So that's another thing too, having conversations with people, the information is there. Now, you might have to mine for the gold, but it's there.
I love that. And I think there's so much. I think it's so important. The work that you do, or what it is that you're called to do, is so important, because I remember hearing a quote a long time ago that was talking about how, like, the most successful people, or the people with the best dreams, were in the graveyard. And it was because they died with those dreams. They didn't walk out the thing that they were supposed to do. And to me, that would just be the most heartbreaking thing in my life. Like, above all else, is that to have something inside of me that God has wanted me to share, or even if it wasn't on a big platform, like to be a celebrity, but even if it was just consulting people or working one-on-one with them, I would hate to die with that dream and never having touched the people I was supposed to touch. And so I love that you brought up roadblocks, because I think it's really important that when we're dreaming, we know that it's not just going to be smooth sailing, that everything's not going to be perfect. Like you said, if it was easy, everybody would just be doing whatever it is that they felt like they were called to do with no roadblocks or anything like that. And so what were some of the roadblocks that you encountered, before you started walking in this purpose?
So much there to unpack. And one of the things I wanted to circle back around before I answer that question was when you were talking about the wealthiest place on earth is the cemetery. As someone who has been in healthcare nearly a decade, and in my previous role, I worked at a critical illness recovery hospital, and a lot of our patients were terminal. The conversations people have when they are staring death in the face, the conversations people have when they've had a catastrophic accident and they will no longer walk or talk or move again. We at our location, we had a lot of complete quadriplegics. It's on a whole nother level of, oh, I wish I could have done this, or I should have done that, or I need to make it right with this person, or I didn't live full. I just want people to think about that. And you always go, it won't happen to me. Everyone that came in there, people would slip and fall during a hiking accident, motorcycle accident, never thinks that it will happen to them. And when it feels like it's the end, or it really is the end, so much comes in people's minds. They want like one last minute or one last, time doing X, Y, and Z. And I always knew like there will be one day where, when you think about the circle of life, where it's the end of our time. And will I said, you know what? I lived full and I died on empty. I want people to think about that. I lived full and I died on empty. And the pandemic was a reminder of all of the uncertainty. Life has always been uncertain, but it was a reminder that, hey, how are you living? How are you operating? What are you living for? What are your values? Are you making life decisions in alignment with your values? That is what was super important for me. Now, to answer your question, the roadblocks that I experienced, and let me add this too, roadblocks continue to come. One of the roadblocks that I remember experiencing and a thought that kept coming in my mind is the, what if this doesn't work out? Right? It took the biggest leap of faith I've ever had in my personal and professional career life to say, hey, I'm going to resign from my job and become an entrepreneur, a businesswoman. And I did not share that with many people because I didn't want to be swayed one way or the other when I had to anchor in what I knew I was being told to do. And the what if, oh my gosh, this what if it crashes and burns? That was the biggest like nagging thing when I first started down this path. And I was reminded by actually my cousin, he's never failed you yet. He won't fail you now. And another person who at the beginning was a stranger, I met through a podcast interview, and actually I was interviewing her. And the comment she made to me as we were talking about fear and taking leaps of faith, she said, well, I just want to remind you that even if you fall, you'll find your wings on the way down. And I was like, and of course my name is a bird, Raven. So I was like, oh. So those are two reminders that it is a journey. I won't fail. And I know what I was told. And that's another thing. When you know that you know that you know, I think that is super important to anchor into that as you're building, as you're doing something new. And another thing that I've had to recognize when it comes to roadblocks is know where you are in the journey or in the path. I had to recognize when I first started that this is a planting season. So I'm assured that the harvest would come and will come, but I have to plant a seed right now. And this is my time of giving and watering those seeds. And I had to recognize that. I heard that very clearly as well, because you're like, well, why is it not a success yet? And it's like, because this is your planting seed. And don't forget and don't forget to water the seed and grow where you're planted. And in every opportunity, make sure that you leave that experience, that person, better than when you found them. So impact and influence, that's how I define leadership. Impact and influence to make everyone around you better.
Raven, this has been such a great conversation. And I think that was a perfect tip to end on, because I love standing on the quote of leaving places better than how I found them. When I enter into a room, when I'm working with somebody, even if I'm doing an interview or whatever it is, always leaving people with something, so that their experience with you was like, I'm glad that I had that experience. I'm glad I got to talk to that person. I'm glad that person spoke into me, or, whatever the situation. And I think you brought up some amazing points throughout this whole talk to really allow people to focus on not only just having a dream, but doing what it takes to actually walk in that, so that you are not getting to a place in your life where you're like, man, I really wish I would have did all of these things, and not allowing people who, not to sound harsh, but who don't really matter sometimes at the end of the day, to tell you why it probably won't happen for you. Because the difference between what you're doing and what other people are doing is that you're actually starting to walk the calling. And so it definitely won't happen if you're not doing anything. Like, that's a for sure, right? So I just want to thank you again for pouring into my listeners. I want to ask everyone to please stay connected with Raven. I'm going to put all of her information down below. Reach out to her, follow her on all of her platforms. And you said you have a podcast too, correct?
I do. It's called Reset with Raven. It's on YouTube as well as wherever you listen to podcasts.
Okay, perfect. And like I said, I'm going to put all of her information. Raven, thank you so much for agreeing to be on my podcast. It has been a true joy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And I want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. As always, you can stay connected with us at unmuteyourmic.org. You can also find us wherever you would find the podcast, as well as YouTube and Instagram. I want to remind you to be bold, be heard, and continue to unmute your mic. Thank you, Raven.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our communities.